Melania Trump, America's First Lady, steps out of a gold-plated penthouse, her life draped in luxury. But behind that dazzling spotlight lies a story few know. Melania built a fortune worth tens of millions of dollars long before she ever set foot in the White House. From a small town in Slovenia to Manhattan's elite circles, how did she create that wealth on her own? Was it her modeling career, savvy business deals, or something else entirely? Her journey sparkles with success, yet it's tinged with whispers, from nude photos in her youth to controversial missteps. A woman so composed. Could there be more hidden behind that enigmatic smile? Join us as we uncover the truth about Melania's fortune and the life she crafted, far beyond the stage's glare. Once a shivering girl in an underheated apartment in Slovenia, Melania Trump grew up to become America's First Lady, living between a gold-laden penthouse and the presidential residence. But before the Dior gowns and official portraits, there was a childhood where everything was scarce except silence, and from that quiet, she began to nurture a dream her family never dared imagine. Melania Trump, born April 26, 1970, was raised in Sevnica, a small town in Slovenia, then still under communist rule. It wasn't an easy place for a child with ambitions. The town was cloaked in gray factories churned out smoke, shops stood empty, and people pinched every penny. Melania's family lived in a modest apartment on the 5th floor of a housing block. Her father, Victor, sold cars and was often away. Her mother, Amalia, worked in a textile factory, sewing children's clothes. They loved each other, but money was always tight. Melania was a quiet child, always watching, while other kids played outside. She studied her mother's work, silently toying with scraps of fabric, mimicking every stitch. No one taught her to dream, but she did anyway. At 5 years old, she knew how to pose for a camera. At school, she'd say, "I want to get out there and see the world." One winter night, she overheard her parents talking in the kitchen. They spoke of leaving the country, but their voices were hesitant, worried, then fell silent. Melania lay still, saying nothing, but something shifted inside her. If the grown-ups were too afraid to step out, maybe she'd have to be the one to do it. Melania's childhood wasn't glamorous. It was cold, frugal, and fueled by a quiet resolve. But was that resolve enough to carry her from that small town to a world her family couldn't even dream of? Melania Trump, the woman who had the world watching every time she stepped off Air Force One, started her modeling career at 16, with no one backing her. She left behind her small town, her beloved family, and a safe life, all to chase a risky dream no one believed in. In 1986, at 16, Melania veered away from architecture and began modeling. She left Slovenia for Milan, then Paris, with just a suitcase, a few outfits, and broken English. She entered the cutthroat world of fashion, where one bad shoot could end your career. Life wasn't glamorous then. She lived in cramped, shared apartments, ate instant noodles to get by, and faced rejection at dozens of castings. But Melania didn't give up. She learned languages, studied how others posed, and slowly started to stand out. By 1996, at 26, she arrived in New York. The city wasn't kind to an Eastern European model, but Melania had something different: composure, hard work, and a refusal to chase scandals. Soon, she graced the covers of major magazines like Vogue, GQ, and Harper's Bazaar. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1998, at a lavish New York party, she met Donald Trump. When he asked for her number, Melania refused and told him to give her his instead. That boldness stuck with him. In 2006, she became an American citizen. It was the dream of millions of immigrants, and she achieved it on her own, without anyone pulling strings. From a girl deemed too quiet to stand out in Milan, Melania built a solid name in New York. But what lay beyond the spotlight? What was her luxurious life really like, and what was the cost of maintaining it? Once dismissed as too bland to shine, Melania Trump can now earn millions with a single signature. She's a woman living amid the Trump family's gold and wealth, with an estimated net worth of over $70 million on her own, and nearly $2.5 billion alongside her husband. If she ever left Trump, she'd walk away with at least $50 million, thanks to a prenuptial agreement. How did someone once seen as just Trump's wife quietly build her own empire? Melania was a model, but she didn't rely on scandals or gimmicks. She chose a different path: silence, professionalism, and meticulous image control. In 2010, she launched Melania timepieces and jewelry on QVC, elegant European-inspired watches and jewelry. No one expected a model from Eastern Europe to sell so well, but within a few years, the line brought in over 45 million in revenue, proving she wasn't just Trump's wife, she was a strategist. In 2024, she released a memoir, sharing untold stories, her immigration journey, her modeling days, facing the media. The book shot to the top of bestseller lists. Less than 6 months later, Amazon announced a $40 million documentary about her life, proof that the Melania brand still captivates. Whether she stays with Trump or not, Melania holds her own power. She speaks little, but every move leaves a mark. From a model labeled too reserved, Melania turned her quiet into something no one could look away from. So, what's life like behind that polished exterior? You don't need to see her bank statements, just step into Melania Trump's homes, and you'll see how far she's come and why she chooses silence in a noisy world. The home most people talk about is the 3-story penthouse atop Trump Tower in the heart of Manhattan, designed in a Versailles style. The 11,000-square-foot apartment boasts walls and columns gilded in 24-karat gold, hand-painted French ceilings, and floors of imported Italian marble. But what keeps it from feeling like a museum is Melania's personal touch. She chose cream silk-upholstered Louis XVI chairs and insisted on soundproof drapes in the bedroom, not for noise, but because she craves absolute quiet. Mornings find her in a glass-walled corner overlooking Central Park, sipping black coffee and reading in French, a habit unchanged for over 20 years in America. Her son Barron's room, which Melania designed herself, reflects her care. Themed around the sky, it features a cloud-painted ceiling, planet-decorated walls, and a real telescope by the window. For her, it's a way to teach Barron to dream, just as she once gazed at the sky from her Sevnica apartment. But Melania doesn't just live in New York. She spends months at Mar-a-Lago, the 20-acre Palm Beach estate once owned by heiress Marjorie Merriweather Post, built in 1927. Trump bought it in 1985, but Melania made it a home. Her private room there isn't as opulent as you'd expect: white walls, delicate lace curtains, an antique vanity, and a cushioned chaise facing a palm garden. Afternoons, she sips chamomile tea alone or reviews handwritten drafts. No one disturbs her. She dislikes excessive service, just quiet. Staff say when Melania arrives, they prepare a small pillow embroidered with lilies, her mother's favorite flower. No one asks, they just know. Then there's a place few expect: a private apartment in Ljubljana, Slovenia. She still owns. It's modest, about 1,000 square feet, with dark wood furniture, white curtains, and a wicker chair on the balcony overlooking the Ljubljanica River. She visits for a few days, unannounced, in the living room. A framed photo of her mother sits on a bookshelf unchanged, even after Amalia's passing. The apartment earns about $115,000 a year in rent, but Melania won't sell or renovate it. For Melania, homes aren't just places to live, they're spaces to maintain control, to choose what stays private and what the world never sees. Unlike the wealthy who flaunt castles and villas, Melania rarely lets reporters inside. She doesn't need to. She lives in quiet, letting her homes do the talking. Melania Trump isn't one to flaunt cars, but every vehicle she chooses reflects her discreet, controlled, and always impeccable. She doesn't drive much, not because she can't, but because she doesn't need to, in New York, Washington, or Palm Beach. She's often seen stepping out of a black Cadillac Escalade ESV, fully loaded, with bulletproof glass and private rear curtains inside. The tan leather interior holds a Fiji water bottle, tissues, and a French magazine on the seat just for her. She doesn't work in the car like Trump. She needs quiet. The driver knows classical music. Volume 3. For official appearances, she opts for a Maybach Mercedes S650 Pullman limousine over 6 meters long, with walnut wood interiors and near-flat reclining seats. It's not a car to turn heads on the street, it's to ensure no one sees her too long when she steps in or out. In a world where a glance can become a headline, Melania controls every second of her visibility. With Trump, she travels on his private Boeing 757, nicknamed Trump Force One. Her private onboard bedroom has an antique-style lamp, a few framed photos of Barron, and a white notebook for writing. She never uses her phone for notes. She writes letters by hand during flights, sometimes to Slovenia, sometimes just for herself. It's when she disappears from the world's gaze. As First Lady, her official transport included Air Force One and Marine One, the helicopter that ferried her from the White House's South Lawn. She always appeared in simple, deliberate colors: soft beige, navy, ivory to keep talk minimal. Once, visiting detained children, she wore a Zara blouse, white jeans, and slip-ons. The trip was quiet, but a photo of her stepping off the helicopter went viral for her. Uncanny calm. But when the car doors close, shutting out the world, what's life like inside those lavish homes? How does she spend her money? What does she keep private? And what's the line she never crosses? She doesn't need to spend to prove anything, but how Melania lives each day shows both how much she's changed and what she's held on to. Despite the opulence, Melania's routine hasn't shifted much over the years. She wakes early around 6:30 in the morning, makes black coffee, reads print newspapers, and checks European news, especially from Slovenia. She barely uses social media, rarely posting. Instead, she follows news through private emails, printed out some in French, Italian, or Slovenian. Weekly, she spends on a private stylist and image consultant, not a large team, but highly selective. Dresses, bags, and shoes are chosen for specific contexts, from political events to private dinners. She avoids flashy designer labels, preferring custom pieces, many worth over $10,000 but never overtly branded. She believes in subtle elegance. Her hobbies are unique. Melania doesn't obsess over shopping, handbags, or jewels. She has plenty but doesn't chase them. She invests in antique art and furniture. In Trump Tower's living room sits an 18th-century French chair she bought at a private auction, not for its price, but because her mother loved that style. She also collects vintage fashion photography books, limited editions from the 1960s and 70s, kept in her private study for her eyes only. But what stands out most, Melania is a family woman, quietly and privately, with her son Barron. She's never delegated decisions. From daily meals to choosing schools, she handles it all. She drove him to school, picked him up, and followed his studies closely. She doesn't push, but she's always there, Barron once said. My mom doesn't yell, but I know when I need to get serious. When Trump was in the White House, Melania chose the staff, planned family life, and guarded her husband's privacy even amid media storms. She didn't appear often, but knew when to step back or stand by him. She personally picked flowers for his office, ensuring he had a quiet corner after press briefings. For her mother, Amalia, Melania cared deeply. After Amalia moved to America, Melania set up a private living area in Trump Tower for her comfort. Weekend dinners, no matter how busy, were sacred with her mother and Barron. When Amalia passed in 2024, Melania handled everything quietly, no fanfare, no grand statements, just a single line. My mother was the greatest inspiration I've ever had. For Melania, family isn't a duty, it's instinct, and it's likely the one thing she's never handed off to anyone else. But in a life that seems so steady, Melania has faced plenty of criticism and gossip, from past photos to hurtful rumors. So when the storms hit, how did she stand firm? When all of America was talking about her, Melania Trump didn't react. She didn't explain, didn't speak up, didn't try to reclaim her image. And that silence, it's what kept people looking her way. In 2016, at a critical moment in the presidential campaign, a newspaper dug up nude photos Melania had shot for Max magazine in the 1990s. The images hit front pages. Headlines screamed. Some questioned, was this appropriate for a potential First Lady? Melania didn't hold a press conference or issue a statement. She just said, "I was a model. I'm not ashamed of those artistic photos." Then came a bigger, more painful scandal, far more personal. In 2018, while raising her young son, the media exploded with news of Donald Trump's alleged affair with Stormy Daniels. The story went global. Papers speculated about a broken marriage, an imminent divorce, instead of appearing with her husband to prove unity. Melania quietly canceled a trip to Davos and vanished from the public eye for weeks. No rebuttals, no tears on TV. Just silence heavy with weight. Even in smaller moments, she faced scrutiny. In 2018, she wore a jacket reading, "I really don't care, do you?" while visiting immigrant children. Social media erupted. Critics called her callous, unfeeling. Days later, she clarified, "That was a message for the media, not the kids." But the damage was done and she returned to her familiar strategy: silence. That same year, Melania underwent kidney surgery thought to be minor, but she was hospitalized for over a week. Her absence sparked rumors, serious illness. Separation depression when she returned. It was with that same calm face, no explanations, no denials, as if she owed no one proof. Then in 2024, the deepest pain came not from the press, but from real loss. Her mother, Amalia, passed after a long illness. At the funeral, Melania didn't give a long speech. She held a photo of her mother in her youth and said, "I am the woman I am today because I was her daughter." Melania doesn't fight back, doesn't blame, doesn't play the victim. But after all, she's endured what remains. And could that very silence be how she leaves a mark longer lasting than any words? In an age where everyone talks too much, the quietest woman left a mark no one can replace. Melania Trump wasn't a first lady of fiery speeches, hugging kids for cameras, or launching splashy charity drives. But she did something else quietly. Steadily, she carved out a space for dignity and meaningful silence. In 2018, she launched Be Best, a campaign focused on children's mental health, online safety, and opioid abuse prevention, though some called it underwhelming compared to other First Ladies' initiatives. Melania stuck with it. Even today, without cameras or slogans, she visited schools, hospitals, and held small meetings with parents and students. Quieter than people expect, but those who met her say she felt real, not performing. After leaving the White House in 2021, Melania didn't fade away. She continued supporting youth charities, maintained her own foundation, and in 2024 released a memoir about being a mother, wife, and holding her dignity in America's chaotic political world. The book didn't promise to expose anyone. It shared how one woman faced a nation's scrutiny without breaking. If Donald Trump is the thunder in the media, Melania is the calm after the rain. That contrast makes her one of the most unique first ladies in history, only the second foreign-born. The only one to rise from a small Eastern European town to both the White House and Trump Tower. In 2025, if Trump returns for a second term, Melania could be First Lady again, but this time with a different stance, nothing to prove, just her own path. The media still asks what will she do next, but as always, Melania likely won't say. She'll let her actions speak. Melania's story isn't about praise. It's a reminder you don't need a perfect starting point. You just need to be strong enough not to be drowned out by the noise. What do you think makes Melania stand out most among America's First Ladies?